meeting has just been concluded, and it was co-chaired by our PPP Center Executive Director, Ms. Cosette Canilao. So she will give us a brief background of the highlights of the recently concluded meeting. Afterwards, we can open the floor for your questions. Now, may we ask Ms. Cosette to go on stage? And to have a smooth flow of the press conference, if you have any question, just line up to the microphone. Before you state your question, please say your name and your organization. Okay, Ms. Cosette.
Good morning, good afternoon na pala. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for being here. Like what Mitch said, earlier we held an APEC PPP experts panel meeting, and one of the highlights, one of the discussions there was the presentation of the Philippine PPP program. So we showcased to the panel where we started from, the approach that we took to jumpstart the PPP program, primarily on capacity building, on having a mechanism to build a robust pipeline of PPP projects, the processes that we've enhanced in evaluating and appraising PPP projects, and at the same time in enhancing the legal and regulatory framework for our PPPs. There were the Indonesian government also presented their PPP program. They've recently set up a PPP unit just last year with the help of multilateral agencies, and they currently have about 10 projects in the pipeline. In the Philippines case, we already have about 60 in our pipeline, 9 of which were 61, 9 of which were already awarded. And that 9 PPP projects that we've awarded during administration, that exceeds the past 3 administrations awarded solicited PPP projects, which is about only 6 projects. So we here in the Philippines we have 11 projects that we are currently tendering, and we are about to roll out 5 more projects, and we have there's going to be a NEDA board on March 24, and 2 PPP projects will be up for approval or discussions as well, and the rest are in the various phase of project preparation and feasibility studies. So with that, in the next panel meeting, the APEC PPP Advisory Council will discuss issues that we've encountered in setting up PPP programs, the solutions that we undertook to overcome those issues. So that will be the main discussion in the next panel meeting sometime in July.
Okay, who wants to throw the first question? Okay, Sel, please state your full name and your organization for documentation.
I'm Celerina Monte from the Daily Manila Shimbun. You have mentioned during the opening program this morning that Japan, or JICA, has already partnered with the Philippines PPP to capacitate selected implementing agencies in developing more PPP projects. Can you elaborate on that, and when was this collaboration started?
Okay. First of all, I'd like to give a background lang about our technical assistance that we've been getting from multilateral agencies. The first one was the major one is with the ADB and the governments of Australia and Canada. Now and also with the World Bank, IFC, and quite recently JICA. The JICA partnership was signed last year. So the technical assistance provided to the PPP to the government involves the identification of 5 government agencies. So we have the DOTC there, DPWH, Department of Energy, Department of Health, and Department of Health, and and another agency that we have yet to identify. So the technical assistance involves the preparation of pre-feasibility studies and the full-blown feasibility study, as well as drafting of bid documents and the structuring of the projects. So that's the scope of the JICA technical assistance course through the PPP Center, but for the implementing agencies.
So, ma'am, with that assistance of JICA, would it mean that the project to be implemented would be done by any Japanese company or what?
No, actually, PPP is very different. It's an open competition, and if we procure any projects, it's open to all nationalities, all open to all foreign or local investors. So that's the what do you call this? That's the process that we follow, set by the laws and the rules of our law. And JICA's technical assistance will primarily be just on project preparation.
So how would JICA benefit from this? I don't think they would help the Philippines without benefiting from this.
Well, I suppose then if they've identified the agencies that they'd like to help or develop PPP projects for. So I suppose those are the agencies, or those are the industries where Japan has expertise on. And they fully understand, and it's not part of our agreement, they fully understand that procurement of the PPP projects will be done through a competitive bidding.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next question. Okay, Mika. State your full name and your organization, please.
Good afternoon, Ms. Cosette. I'm Mikael Flores of Business World. I understand you also presented the infrastructure pillar under the Cebu Action Plan this morning. Can you expound on that?
Yes. We are actually recommending to the panel for the various PPP, for the various jurisdictions to share knowledge through a knowledge management portal. So in PPP Center, we're far advanced already in the development of our knowledge management portal. It will have several modules, one of which is the it being the repository of all PPP related information and documents. And we are proposing to the panel that the other PPP Center jurisdictions would also go that path and share and link with the rest of the PPP Center, so there will be timely information sharing with respect to the program and in structuring their various projects, our various projects collectively. Another one is in the standardization of contracts. We've found out here in the Philippines that if the government states clearly and far in advance what its policies are with respect to PPPs, policies in termination payment regime, in material adverse government action, and the key provisions of the contract. Once there are clear policy guidelines on those subjects, it's easier for the investors, for the private sector, to understand the framework by which a country is operating on with respect to PPPs. And that's something also that and that goes towards standardization of contracts, if not the whole contract, just the major provisions of the contract. And that's what we are proposing to be shared with as well with the APEC economies.
In terms of progress, where are we at since the last PPP experts meeting was held in China last year, particularly in the developing of a guidebook on a framework for the implementation of a multi-year plan on infra development and investment? I think that's one of the main things that you're working on, the PPP experts?
The government. Well, for the government of the Philippines, the National Economic Development Authority, in coordination with the various implementing agencies, has put together a list of priority infrastructure projects through the Infrastructure Committee, and I think in that aspect. NEDA, in coordination with also development partners, including JICA, they've already finished the highway master plan and also other transit master plan, wherein it shows the convergence between the projects of both DPWH, the OTC.
Ma'am, these infra projects, of course, require a lot of money. It runs into the billions. So, are there discussions on funding options or funding requirements that are available within and among member economies that have been discussed this morning or in previous meetings?
Well, that has not been discussed, but it's always been the premise of PPPs that since one of the benefits of doing PPP is to attract private sector financing. So from the private sector end, they have, I think, several financing options which they can use, or funding option which they can use to finance the PPP projects. But of course, the international financing institutions, they've always expressed their interest in supporting PPPs by financing the private sector.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Who wants to ask the next set of questions? Okay, Ben. Please state your full name and your organization, please.
Hi, good afternoon, Ma'am Cosette. I'm Ben De Vera from Philippine Daily Inquirer. Follow through to Mika's question with regards financing. Did you observe across APEC members, did you observe any gap in terms of financing for infrastructure or for BPP in particular? And also, will you also consider, sourcing from multilaterals like ADB and perhaps the newly formed bank by China, the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank? Will there be any partnerships between APEC and probably this new China-led bank?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. Well, actually, that has not been discussed in details, but as I've mentioned, World Bank was there, ADB, and even the private banks, non-multilateral financing institutions such as the Mitsubishi Bank. They're there. Several funding options have been made available for infrastructure projects, and I do believe that the IFIs, together with the other financial institutions, are preparing for funding or financing these infrastructure projects. But one of the concerns that's been repeated not only in this venue but in other venues as well are the lack of properly prepared or bankable projects, and that's one of the areas that we, the member of the APEC economies, are really working on to make sure that we prepare bankable projects that financial institutions would be able to fund.
So they're very interested, not only multilaterals but also even
Exactly.
private banks. But how do we make? What are the initiatives of APEC so that we can have properly prepared projects?
Well, first of all, by sharing of experience and sharing of best practices, and that's what's been discussed earlier on, how the clear relationship or coordination among various government agencies within a jurisdiction on how to deliver PPPs, how to properly allocate risks, and also how to make bidding process more transparent and level.
Last question will be: will you institutionalize the PPP as a major thrust of the APEC or something like that?
I believe because of the infrastructure gap, not only here in the Philippines, but not only in other APEC economies, but almost worldwide, private sector participation and private sector financing is one of the key solutions in filling up narrowing the gap between what we need and what the current infrastructure are.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Who wants to ask the next question? Okay, ma'am, just to keep the ball rolling, in the forum, it was stressed that some countries are just setting up their PPP units, like Indonesia. So, what best practices can the Philippines share with other APEC member economies as far as public-private partnerships is concerned?
Yes, I mentioned the four critical success factors for implementing a PPP program. One of which is the support from the government, support and buy-in not only from the highest officer of the land, but also from its economic ministers and also from the oversight and implementing agencies. It has to be a concerted effort. Second is having a central unit that facilitates, monitors, and coordinates steps and action in pushing forward PPP projects, and that's the role given to the PPP Center. Now, the other one is a clear definition of roles of the various agencies involved in delivering PPPs, like the PPP Center, the Department of Finance, the NEDA, as well as other government bodies. Last one is, I suppose, the fourth one is the support from multilateral agencies in terms of sharing their information, in terms of sharing resources, in doing capacity building, because we need well-capacitated, a successful PPP program needs well-capacitated implementing agencies and oversight agencies.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, Jen.
I'm Jennifer Ambanta from Manila Standard today. You mentioned that there will be a NEDA board meeting on March 24. Can you elaborate how many projects are they going to tackle and what are these projects?
Yeah, the scheduled meeting, NEDA board meeting on the 24th or 25th, I'm not too sure when. We have two PPP projects in the agenda, and that is the mass transit system loop, which is the subway, the first subway that would connect, in the Philippines, that would connect Bonifacio Global City, Makati, as well as the Pasay area. So that's one that's going to be in the agenda. And the other one is the motor vehicles inspection system project from, again, the Department of Transportation and Communication. The subway, the estimated project cost for the subway is around 370 billion. For the motor vehicles inspection system, about 19 billion.
Any more questions? Okay, please state your name and organization.
Hi, ma'am. George Bandola of People's Television. Yesterday at the Joint Foreign Chamber Commerce Forum, they say that we already have the growth, but we still need more investments, particularly in agriculture and the power sector and the communication. Are there any other PPP projects that addresses to this sector?
Well, in the energy section, we have a project in the pipeline, and that is the Batangas-Manila natural gas pipeline. So it's again in the nearing completion of the business case, and we hope to be able to submit it to the Investment Coordination Committee by the end of the month. So that's one energy-related project. Project cost is around it's quite a huge amount because the pipeline will be from Batangas all the way to Navotas. Now, in terms of in agriculture, we are working with the National Irrigation Agency to see if we can develop a project for some of the national irrigation system.
How do you prioritize the projects, ma'am? Are they really NEDA based, or you just getting it from the private sector who wants to invest on this particular sector?
These projects were identified by the government. So as part of the listing of priority projects, implementing agencies would come up with their list of priority projects, and it will then be submitted to the NEDA. And then from the list of priority projects, we help. The PPP Center helps the implementing agencies in identifying which projects can be done via PPP. So that's one of the I think the biggest changes in our PPP program. One of the biggest changes there is that in the past, most PPP projects would come from the private sector via unsolicited mode, but this time around, the 9 projects that we've awarded, those are all solicited projects, meaning the projects and the ideas and the conceptualization came from the government.
Okay, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions from the floor. Anyone else, El?
Ma'am, you have mentioned that there are risks in PPP, in implementing PPP projects. ADB President Nakao earlier said that PPP is not panacea or cause of miracle to deliver public works. And he also cited some risks. So what are the risks that you are seeing in implementing PPP projects? And so far, did the government experience any risk or any biggest risk that you have experienced so far, if there are or there is?
Yes, I agree with the president of ADB. The PPP or PPPs are not the end-all and be-all of delivering infrastructure. And as a matter of fact, it's only but a portion of the total infrastructure requirements. It will only address probably about 20 to 30% of the total infrastructure requirements of any country. Now, we've had huge PPP projects before, and PPPs, if not structured properly, we will not benefit or we will not get the value for money that's expected from PPPs. A classic example of that one would be the MRT3. The MRT3 is an unsolicited project of the previous administrations, yes. And unfortunately, the contract does not provide for a performance-based availability payments, and that's what we have corrected in the program that we have now. Other examples would probably be the NAIA Terminal 1. Again, another unsolicited proposal. There were some issues in the Swiss challenge, and even in identifying the criteria that's the criteria for the challenger, or the qualification criteria, I suppose, for the challenger. So those we have addressed in earlier on the very first project that we delivered under the PPP program under this administration. So we've learned from the big mistakes of the past, and we've included lessons learned from those projects into our framework right now. And we hope to institutionalize the initiatives or the reforms that we did through the enactment of the amendments to the BOT law, the Build, Operate, Transfer law.
We have room for one last question from the floor. Is there anyone else who wants to ask? Ben? Okay.
I'm about the subway. Have you ironed out there were issues on where it should go Or there was a parang a shortcut and a longer route. So
Yes, the TOTC has looked into two alignment for the subway, and the Investment Coordination Committee approved the 26th alignment as the main one, with an alternate for the 32nd Street. So that's what's going to be presented to the NEDA board.
so the 32nd is an alternate. So, but the NEDA board can decide which one of the two.
The endorsement or the approval of the ICCs for the 26th
Alright.
Street. So, yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, as a closing, ma'am, can you say what benefits can APEC economies derive if they all push the PPP agenda forward?
First of all, of course, infrastructure is one of the critical ingredients in sustaining the growth of not only the Philippines but of any ASEAN economy. Hence, infrastructure development via PPP and leveraging on the efficiency and expertise of the private sector is something that we hope will give, and if done properly, will give us value for money and will benefit the public as well as the government.
Okay, on that note, thank you very much, Executive Director Canilao, and thank you very much also to our media friends, and have a good day ahead.